usually prefer to promote science rather than bitch about religion. But all the discussion boards and all my videos invariably drag dogma to the forefront and focus on philosophy, something I've never been interested in. This has forced me to examine things I wouldn't otherwise have studied. And at the request of several subscribers, I'm going to use this video to express my philosophical perspective. I was an atheist for 15 years before I learned what that word meant. That was 10 years ago, and I'm still learning. I knew I didn't believe in the Abrahamic concept of God, or the typical vision of divinity, but I couldn't call myself an atheist, because how could you believe in nothing? That doesn't even make sense. Well, it turns out that nihilists might believe in nothing, but they're just a tiny subset of atheists. That doesn't apply to humanists, materialists, communists, or empiricists. Most of those groups definitely believe in something, they just don't believe in a God. Of course, it helps to know what a God is, too. There are several definitions, many of which ignore most of the entities already universally accepted as deities since the age of antiquity. One which applies to all of them, and only to them, is that a god is a supernatural, anthropomorphic entity with magic powers, whose immortality is independent of whatever physical form it uses to manifest itself. It's important to understand what religion is, too, especially since some idiots say that atheism is a religion, and other folks say it means the very opposite. Neither is true. Atheism doesn't mean without religion, it means without a god. Speculation about the afterlife doesn't always require divinity. In fact, it turns out several religions don't necessarily include gods, and if they do, they may only be lesser deities or superfluous at best. Shaman, pantheists, animists, Taoists, Druids, and Chinese ancestor worshippers usually don't believe in gods, so they're all technically atheists. Even Buddhists can be atheists, depending on whether they see the Buddha as a god or as a mortal teacher of wisdom. I couldn't call myself a rationalist either, because it turns out that many rationalists are religious, and it is religion that I reject, because of the many claims religion makes that are obviously and demonstrably false, and even morally wrong, while extorting support through prejudice and paranoid propaganda. It is dishonest to pretend to know things that no one even can know, yet that's what all religions do. If you call yourself agnostic rather than atheist because you think atheist might be too strong a word, then ask yourself the following question. Regardless whether you consider that divinity could exist, are you convinced that some sort of God surely does exist? When I asked myself the same question, I was very disappointed with the answer, because everything that religious instructors had taught me about atheism was as wrong as everything else they ever taught me. Atheists typically do not disallow any chance of spirituality or metaphysics. We just don't say that such things exist when there's nothing to imply that they do. There is no way that any religion could prove that their depiction of the fate of our souls or the afterlife is any more accurate than the contrary claims of any other religion, nor can they collectively show that souls even exist. Every aspect of any religious doctrine might have been imagined out of nothing, and no part of any of that can be distinguished from the illusions of delusion. That's the truth of it, and anyone who wants to is welcome to try and prove me wrong. So for a long time I preferred to call myself agnostic. Agnostics might believe in a deity, or they might not. Either way, we can never honestly claim to know anything about the true nature of God, including whose God it is, or whether there even is one. Yet atheists reject all possibility that there even could be a God, right? Again, no. That's just what I was told by people who never knew any better. If you're open to the idea that one or more gods might be real, but you doubt if any actually are, then you're not just agnostic, you're atheist too. Most agnostics are atheists, and vice versa. Many don't even know it. An atheist is simply someone whose perspective does not include a God, meaning that they don't assert that some sort of deity must be real. Many people would say that the term atheist describes those who lack religious faith, but we know that doesn't apply to all atheists, only to a few of them, in fact. So the word is too broad for that application. I thought I could call myself a realist, but that word is too vague as well. I used to call myself an empirical rationalist, but I shouldn't need a double qualifier. I could say that I'm a free thinker, but that's a mouthful too. I could call myself secular, since I consider myself separated from religion, but faith is the reason that religion is dishonest, and anyone who really cares about knowledge should discard faith before he can honestly begin his quest for truth. So what word is there to describe someone who doesn't believe in a God and doesn't endorse any religion because we don't assume anything on faith? I could call myself a skeptic, but as applicable as that may be, I've been conditioned by my Christian upbringing to associate that word with all sorts of negative connotations. There is another word that means what everyone thinks atheists should mean. That word is infidel. It too suffers from negative associations, including the notion of being disloyal. But I was never loyal to any belief in the first place. Why should I want to continue to defend a belief in something that is likely to be wrong? The moment I suspect that I may be in error, I will scrutinize my own beliefs and may even discard them if warranted. Whereas a person of faith will consciously decide in advance to assume whatever they want for no good reason at all and keep on believing it no matter what, even after they've been proven wrong. That will never be the case for me. What I believe is simply not a matter of choice. If it seems that my position should be corrected, my mind will obligately change whether I want it to or not. What I would rather believe simply doesn't matter if it isn't apparently true. So I am an infidel. My philosophy is a rejection of faith by definition. It's not that I refuse to accept that there might be other things beyond what my senses alone can detect, or that aren't dreamt of in my philosophy. I simply have no reason to say that they're there when they may not be, and I won't assume that they are there until objectively verifiable evidence sufficiently indicates that they are. It means that I'm not a liar. It means that I won't believe anything without question or with complete conviction. All my beliefs are tentative, based on evidence, and will be adjusted as my understanding of the facts improve. I certainly won't believe impossible nonsense for no good reason, and that's what faith requires. It takes faith to assert as fact that which is not evidently true, or to deny reality in favor of a predetermined conclusion, or to willfully convince oneself of a preferred position held a priori. In any other topic, these would all be considered lies. How can it be called truth if we can't even show that it is even true? Yet faith is thinking that if you make believe hard enough, you can wish it into being true. That's what faith is. I've checked every authoritative source for this and have found that faith is an assertion of absolute and unreasonable conviction, assumed without reason, and defended against all reason. As such, it is the most dishonest position I can imagine. It's counterintuitive and counterproductive, irrational and illogical, and consequently I must reject it outright. Because the most important thing to me is that I not be fooled into believing anything that is not supported and therefore likely isn't true. So if you're talking about people whose only commonality is that they don't believe anything on faith, don't call them atheists. Call them infidels. Likewise, if you want to be recognized for your rejection of faith more than just your rejection of deities, then using the scarlet letter is insufficient. Besides, symbols shouldn't be initials. The great ones are simple geometric shapes. A couple years ago, when people were looking for an appropriate symbol to represent atheism, I thought about one of my own design. But of course I wanted to specifically represent a realistic philosophy of logical, reasonable rationalism, a commitment to critical skepticism and scientific empiricism, of academic accuracy and intellectual honesty, all of which require an abject rejection of faith. This is what I came up with. My son gave it a name. So I present the Zot-Doz as my symbol for the infidel.
So, what's the symbology there?
Symbology? I'm sure the word you were looking for was symbolism. What is the symbolism there?